everyone, and welcome to this presentation on justice and social welfare. This is part 7 for week 3, and again, the chapter 2 citation there. So now we're switching gears a little bit to talk about theories of social justice. So not just justice, but social justice. And the idea of, is inequality acceptable in society? We're going to start off with Robert Nozick. Nozick brought libertarianism to the forefront, and his main focus was on procedural justice and ownership of property. And what do we mean by procedural justice? This is the belief that what matters is how the market is carried out, in this case in a free and fair manner, rather than the results itself. And as long as the market exchanges are carried out with free and fair procedures, it does not matter if the outcome of these procedures, these exchanges, there should be an S there, is unequal. So for Nozick, among others, the key piece here is this idea of procedures. So free markets are considered fair because they are voluntary. And here, property rights are considered natural rights. For more information on that, you can look up John Locke. But the idea is that as a natural right, government should not interfere with this right. And as you may have guessed, this is the idea of unregulated capitalism, or laissez-faire capitalism, which means hands-off. So the government has a hands-off approach to capitalism and does not interfere. Let's talk a little bit about Nozick's entitlement theory of justice. And here I'm giving you another citation. But essentially, he was against Rawls's idea on redistribution. We'll talk about Rawls later, and I know I keep referring to him, and I promise we will get to it. But for now, let's focus on Nozick. So there are 3 principles of his theory, his entitlement theory of justice. The first is that there has to be justice in acquisition. Acquisition of what? Acquisition of property. There has to also be justice in the transfer of that property. And then if either 1 or 2 is not met, then there should be justice in rectifying that situation. So what does this all mean? So let's start with justice in acquisition. This is the idea that individuals acquire property in a just manner via this idea of an original claim, which is that the resources a person uses to make their money had to be legitimately theirs to begin with. Now, of course, there's some concerns and critiques about the idea of original claim, who had the property first, who does it originally belong to, especially given the history in this country of preventing property ownership to certain groups, ownership of land, etc. But for now, let's just go with this is what he is saying, okay? So there's this idea of an original claim, the natural right of owning property, and if a person wants to transfer that property, it has to be from a person who had the original claim in the first place, and so it could be via gifts or purchase or an inheritance. If either of these 2 was unjust, the property should be taken away and given to the original claimant, and there might be some redress involved as well. Continuing on, the idea here is that if you have justice in acquisition of that property, this original claim, and you have justice in transfer, so you have both these things, then interference from the state, and which means taking some away to redistribute to others, violates an individual's rights. So this is what the entire entitlement theory of justice is. The idea that if these 2 are in place, the justice in acquisition, justice in transfer, then a person is entitled to that property or that claim, and the state should not be interfering in terms of taking away some of that and redistributing it to others to make things equitable or fair or equal or what have you. So here's a quote that I think kind of captures this really well, again, from that same source I cited earlier. Each person's talents and abilities are their own, and each person has a right to keep the fruits of those talents and abilities. Forceful redistribution of those fruits would fail to respect autonomy, and that is an injustice. I think I paraphrased this or something, but in any case, this kind of summarizes Nozick's belief. And so if you think back to the justice video, the Crash Course in Philosophy video that I asked you all to watch, this would be the example of the basketball player earning more because of his abilities. And, because of his skills, he gets to keep the fruits of his labor. Okay. So according to Nozick, a just society involves laissez-faire capitalism where inequality is acceptable. He does say if some do not have property or lose it in the market, then voluntary charities are permissible. So that's the end of part 7. Next up, we have part 8, or the Ocho, which always reminds me of Dodgeball, the movie, which if you haven't seen it, I recommend it, but it's not a sponsor or anything like that. It's just a funny movie, I think. Okay, I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.